Hello and welcome to another episode of Starside Chat. I am one of your hosts, Aaron, and with me as always is Zach. How's it going, Zach?
Good. We were just talking about how it's crazy that June is almost over.
It's true.
Week as we put this podcast up is the last week of June, and then we're into July.
This is sort of our post-mortem on fake E3. Obviously, the Nintendo Direct happened after all the other showcases a week later, so...
I don't know if you want to get into it, but my condolences on no Silksong news.
Yeah, no showcases, which is crazy. I was so sure it was going to happen at Microsoft, and then I was so sure it was going to happen at Nintendo. But we had a little bit of it's not really news, but people were upset about no Silksong news, and apparently one of the people associated with it, maybe an artist or a developer, got on the Discord and was like, "Don't worry, everybody. It's not in development hell. It's just being worked on. There's no there's no insidious reasons that it's being held or anything." But people are still kind of bummed to not get anything at any press conference.
I have to say, you had me convinced when you talked about how it was rated that that means they're done adding content to it, and all they have to do is polish things and make sure it's good to go, and then they can start releasing it. But
I mean, that's still true. It definitely did get rated in a couple different countries. I think Korea and Australia, South Korea and Australia. But
maybe they have different rating requirements. I don't know.
Maybe. Australia, they're in Australia. Team Cherry is in Australia. And also, I read something about how games take forever to come to Australia for some reason. So it could be that's why they're getting that one over with first. But I don't know. I don't know when we're gonna see it. I am now doubtful it will come out in 2024. But I guess we'll see. It could be a 2025 game.
Yeah, that's crazy to me to think of that. But I guess it's always possible it could slip out of this year.
Yeah. But on to more fun news. Let's talk about the news of the week.
So one of the big things that people highlighted when the PlayStation Portal came out initially, which I do have and I do like, is that you could not sign in to public Wi-Fi networks. And they were like, well, that makes it so this is not just a great travel device to still be able to play your PlayStation games on the go, because obviously it's using PlayStation's remote play, but it doesn't have anything on device. So it's connecting to Wi-Fi and allowing you to remote play stuff from your PS5 on the go. And so they highlighted, well, a big problem with that approach is that if you try to sign into a Wi-Fi network at a hotel or something, very often you'll run into, you must sign in to the Wi-Fi network through some web browser.
A captive portal.
Yeah, and so you couldn't do it before, but in a recent update, PlayStation Portal is getting that public Wi-Fi sign-in support. So they're adding that, so they're hopefully fixing that. They're also adding some other stuff some visual feedback for the touchpad area. So basically the touchscreen is the touchpad from the DualSense controller. So a few little updates there that are nice to see, quality of life improvements that will make the device even better. So yeah, I like it. We'll get into it later, but I've played SteamWorld Heist recently, and I actually played a decent portion of it on the PlayStation Portal, because it's a great game for that type of device where you don't necessarily want to play a shooter or something where you need I don't know, super fast internet to keep up with what you're doing. Right. It's a little bit more stop and go, and you can sort of pick and choose your moments. And so it worked out super well for that. And I actually really enjoyed playing it on the PlayStation Portal. So yeah, hopefully they just keep improving the device and making it better. But do we want to talk Nintendo Direct first, or do we want to talk Dragon Age the Veilguard? Because those were sort of the big reveals over the last couple of weeks since we last recorded.
Let's do the Direct after this, because I think we're going to talk about that more. But I wanted your take on something that happened after we recorded that was still kind of in the fake E3 zone was they did the big gameplay reveal for Dragon Age of the Veilguard. And there was also like a number of like story reveal trailers. And I've never played a Dragon Age, but what did you think of this, Zach? I have read that it's a kind of a departure from previous Dragon Age games.
It is, and I do think that will turn some people off. So as you always have with these, if they like try to make it a little bit more appealing to the masses and a little bit more action oriented when it was initially sort of more, I guess, strategic.
Tactical?
Yeah, tactical is maybe the word. You're going to turn some people off from that. And I think we have seen that sort of a little bit of backlash with that, where they're like, oh, you're dumbing down the RPG stuff and turning it into an action game. And I don't think that's like unfair criticism, but also like we haven't seen the RPG elements just yet. Like we didn't know
see any UI, did we? Any like
at no point do they show like a character leveling up and you slotting points or like picking different things. A criticism of this was a little bit like, oh, they could have used like a high level character so that you, instead of when they pull up the ability wheel, instead of having most of the slots on the ability wheel locked so you can't really see anything, they could have just had a ton of stuff there and you could have shown the character using all kinds of different abilities. And like, yeah, that would have been cool. But maybe they're still trying to hold some of those cards close to the chest. But I think it looked really cool. I played some of the first one, but didn't stick with it. And the thing I didn't like about the first one was that it basically felt like MMO combat, but not in an MMO. And I don't particularly love MMO combat most of the time. And I didn't play Dragon Age 2. I did play Inquisition, which I liked overall, even though the combat, I didn't love the action combat as much. I typically would play it in the tactical mode, because I found it so much easier to sort of manage what was happening on the battlefield. And so I do a little bit lament the loss of that. It seems like that is no more. But I do think they're moving in a more like Mass Effect inspired direction. So basically they're taking the action combat style of the Mass Effect games and just like porting it on top of Dragon Age, which again, like that's going to turn some people off from like longtime fans of it, but I like it. So I guess I don't know what to say about that. Also, the combat looked cool. It looked fast and action packed. I don't know if I would say it was as God of War like as maybe we initially thought, because there was like that leak that happened. I think it just looks more like a, action hack and slash, Mass Effect inspired combat thing, where instead of using guns, you're using like swords and shields and things like that. So I was into it.
There's only 3 classes, which is interesting to me.
Trying to remember how many classes there were in Inquisition.
Because it's just rogue, fighter, and I think the third one is like spellcaster. Yeah,
but there are like different specializations. So if I recall correctly, it's been a long time since I played Inquisition. So like, don't take my word as like lore, but you have like your sword and shield guy, and then you can like become like a two-handed weapon sort of soldier type of character. And you have like your rogue, where you have like you're an archer and you have a bow, but you can do like the dual dagger, like stealth, sneaky type of a character as well. And then like with your mage, you can be like, I don't know. I don't remember the different things you could do with that, but I just remember there was more than just 3. And so they only show 3 here, but I feel like there's going to be more options than that once you get into the game. But yeah, story-wise, again, I'm not like a super lore nerd when it comes to Dragon Age. So I just know the main person you're going after in this trailer is Solus, and he was a party member in Inquisition, and he kind of goes rogue on you. And now he's, I guess, the bad guy. So I'm going to have to look up like a recap of things before I start this game eventually and refresh my memory on how everything goes. But But yeah, I was into this, so I will definitely play it. How did it look to you as someone who has not played these games before?
I mean, I already maybe had it in my mind that it was maybe more Mass Effect, but it really did look like a Mass Effect game to me in that, you have your two party members and then you have the radial wheel that comes up and you're sort of selecting things they can do. A lot of jumping around. It seemed like it gave me kind of like Arkham game feels, kind of where, like, how when you're playing those Arkham games, if you are beating up some guy as Batman and then you target another guy who's kind of far away, he'll do like a crazy cartwheel to get to that guy. There were sort of some crazy cartwheels that were happening as they moved between enemies, but the aesthetic was very cool. They're like in a big city, and there's, I guess, almost like a police flying castle looking for them with a spotlight, which I think looked very cool. Like kind of like an airship that doesn't look like an airship that I've ever seen before, where it looks like just a crazy castle with spires in the air. I thought was a very cool thing to see. It looked a little bit not on rails, but it looked like I guess you were in
linear.
A mission. So yeah, linear is a good. Yeah. It looked very linear. But I don't know. I'm interested in it. I want to see more of it. I want to see more. I want to see leveling up. I want to see like inventory screens and what that looks like. And I think that will make me like it more or hate it more. But I'm positive on it right now.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool. You get to see a little glimpse of like a lot of different elements of the game, like having conversations and making choices and things like that. So I thought it was good that they were able to sort of highlight some of that stuff. And it's good to see that it's there, and hopefully they're not dumbing down on those elements. But yeah, I was super into this, and I will probably definitely play it. And coming later this year was the big news drop as well. So not just that they were able to show off a good sized chunk of the game, but also that they got a release date for later this year. So I'll probably play it later this year.
Well, should we get into the big direct?
Yeah, let's talk about the Nintendo Direct. So obviously no Silk Song, but I thought that a good show overall.
A really good show. I think going into this, we were texting about it. Like, what are they going to show? They seem to not have a lot coming up to the end of 2024, and also we all know they're prepping for whatever the Switch 2 is going to be called. So they have announced they're going to announce whatever the Switch 2 is by the end of the fiscal year, which for them, or I don't know if it's for everybody, but that's March of 2025. So before March of 2025, we will get a Switch 2 reveal. It could be very similar to what happened with the Switch, where they reveal it in October and it comes out in March. That would be great.
March,
but they came out swinging, and they have. I saw a headline on like Polygon or something where they were saying that the Switch is going out with a bang instead of a whimper, because they have a ton of stuff that's coming out in the second half of 2024, which is very exciting to see.
Yeah, I thought for sure that based on the fact that Switch 2 is delayed to next year, that they were probably not going to have a whole lot to show, because they were probably holding a lot of that stuff to be launch titles for the Switch 2. But it turns out they actually had a lot more than I expected. The first thing I thought was pretty cool, Mario and Luigi Brothership.
Yeah, this is sort of a Mario RPG type of thing where you and your brother, I think it's there was a game I watched someone play on Twitch that was very similar to this, that wasn't a Paper Mario game, where you were Mario and Luigi.
I think the series started on the DS. Yeah. And so they're just sort of bringing that back. Yeah, it's very Super Mario RPG inspired. So it's like a spiritual successor, I think, to Super Mario RPG, in a weird place, because they had Paper Mario, which was the spiritual successor. And I feel like to differentiate the series, Paper Mario has sort of veered off in a different direction a little bit. And now they're bringing this back as like a, hey, we still have this type of
I will
thing.
say I don't love the art style. It just does not mesh with me, but I like the gameplay looked really good to me.
Yeah, I liked Super Mario RPG a lot. So, and I never got to play the old Mario and Luigi games because I never had a DS when those were happening. So I am interested to check this out. It's coming on November 7th.
Are you interested in these Dragon Age HD 2D remakes?
I'm interested insofar as I think it's cool that they're happening and that they're using that HD 2D art style. I think I'm more interested in these than the Octopath Traveler games for some reason. I don't know why. But everybody loves those games. And like Dragon Quest has been around for such a long time and people love them. So I think it's cool that they're coming. What about Super Mario Party Jamboree? I kind of didn't have this on my bingo card as like another game that they would launch before.
No, I would not have expected this. It looks cool. I have not really played a Mario Party since N64 days, but I think the previous Switch Mario Party games have been well received. And I think a criticism maybe of the previous ones that there weren't enough boards, like weren't enough playing boards. This one's got 5 new boards as well as 2 boards from previous games, so it's 7 boards this time. So I think people will be happy about that. I don't really have like a group of 4 or 5 people to play this with. So, but you can play online, which is I think a cool feature. You can play with like up to 20 people.
The coolest part about this, I thought, was them being like, this is the thing that in the series that inspired those like party games like Fall Guys and all those other like the animal one, whatever that one's called. And they're like, well, we're going to lean into that and sort of take the narrative back and be like, hey, this was the thing we started. And now you can have like, it's not like a huge number of people, but 20 players is still solid. And you can sort of have your little mini game marathon where you just play with 20 people. I'll be curious to see like if that ends up being like a fun sort of Twitch thing, the way like the animal one that I can't remember the name of and Fall Guys did there for a while. I kind of doubt it a little bit, but it's possible. I have played some of these games over the years just because like my parents will have a copy, and like when I go to hang out with them over the holidays, they'll be like, hey, we should play something. Let's play this Mario Party game. So it's like that type of a thing for me. It's not like something I'm going to pick up and be like, get 4 friends together and be like, hey, let's play this. But like once in a great while, I will play this probably.
They had 2 big announcements. Let's talk about the first one that I did not see coming. Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. What did you think of this? Yeah,
so this was cool because they were bringing back that art style from Link's Awakening.
Yeah.
So I thought it was smart to bring that art style back and sort of bring a game sort of in that vein back, but to really switch it up. So in this one, you're not playing as Zelda or you're not playing as Link, you're playing as Zelda. And because of that, they've really switched up the gameplay. So you're not just like running around with a sword and hacking and slashing the way you would with Link. Instead, you're using Zelda's ability to like create echoes of different items in the environment and use them to like take out enemies, but also to like platform and get around the map. So I thought it was kind of a cool twist on things. What about you?
It's interesting. I feel like they're using what they learned from Breath of the Wild, like the player freedom type of thing, and putting it in this like top down, where like now you have all these different ways to tackle situations. Like she was like creating beds in a staircase to get over a wall and stuff, which there's probably other ways you can solve that problem. But another interesting thing I think about this is if you watch the trailer, in the UI of it, on the left-hand side, you can see like the little buttons, and one of them is assigned the tri-rod, and the other ones are blank right now. And I wonder if you get more interesting things to do stuff with, like, because there were like 2 or 3 trailers for Tears of the Kingdom before they revealed like building stuff, basically. So I wonder if we're going to get another trailer where we see another one of her abilities that it's being used, because it seems weird to have that UI on the left hand of the screen and it's always just the one button that's assigned. So I feel like you have to be able to assign different things to different buttons. But it's also called the Tri-Rod, and I wonder if it does 3 things because of that. But I don't know. I feel like there's more to be revealed about this. But I'm into this. I think I'll definitely play it. It looks very cool.
Tri was the name of the fairy that they showed.
Oh, that's right. Maybe that's why it's called that. I think she's going to get different items though, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, but I think
you're able to assign to different things.
I think you're right that it is like them being inspired by like Tears of the Kingdom and just like that sort of creative element where players could like come up with different solutions to solve different problems based on their ability to like craft different things. And so, yeah, it's basically them taking that and putting it into this like sort of top-down Zelda game. So I thought it looked really cool. That's coming on September 26th. Like that's not that really far away. So
pretty excited about that.
Yeah, cool to have it just like announced out of nowhere. Nobody saw it coming and be like, hey, a couple months later, you'll be playing this. So
there was one other big announcement, but before we get to that, let's get to some other small ones. Nintendo 64 Switch Online Mature 17 Plus.
Ooh.
Turok and Perfect Dark came to and they're not like, I don't even think they're HD remakes. I think they're basically just ports. And they haven't done anything to like fix the controls of Perfect Dark or anything like that. So I've heard mixed stuff on this. I've watched some people check them out, and a cool thing about it is Perfect Dark does have online multiplayer, which is very cool. But again, you sort of have to wade through the controls. There's a better version of Perfect Dark that was on, I think, the Xbox Live Arcade that had like actual dual analog stick controls, and they fixed a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, it's not that version.
That's kind of how it went for GoldenEye as well.
Yeah, I don't know why they. I guess it's just like such. It feels bad to say, but it's like so low effort. They basically just ported the exact game, which is whatever. But that's cool, I guess. Stray is coming to the Switch, which is, I guess, cool. It'll obviously not look as good as on different consoles. Basketball is coming to Nintendo Switch Sports. Was there anything else in this that you thought you wanted to talk about before we get to the other big thing?
I mean, I'm into Luigi's Mansion 2. That's coming this week as this podcast is going up.
I'll be picking that up.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to pick that up and play it at some point. I was a little bit bummed out by Metal Slug Attack Reloaded because I was like, oh, like I'm into that, whatever that Metal Slug tactical game that's going to come out. I was like, oh, are they just doing like, different like spin-off versions of Metal Slug? Because that's kind of cool. And they were like, oh, this is like a tower defense style Metal Slug game. I was like, oh, cool. And then I looked it up, and it turns out this is like a mobile game that's been around for a couple of years, and they just are like removing the microtransaction nonsense from it and just making it like a port that you can play on Switch. And I was like, oh, I immediately am not interested in this anymore. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but people are into those Ace Attorney games, so they're just like bringing that collection over. So there's that as well. And then what else?
Capcom. There's the Marvel Capcom Fighting Collection, which people I think are pretty excited about.
Yeah. I know people like that Darkest Dungeon series of games, so that's coming to Switch as well. And the other big one that was sort of their one more thing was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond.
Could not have expected this. This is kind of a joke because, or it's a running gag is that Metroid Prime 4 is never going to come out because it was announced, I think, 7 years ago or something like that, a crazy long time ago. And then there were rumors it was in development hell, and then we heard an announcement that they were switching the team and kind of starting over from scratch, and that was a couple years ago. And then we didn't hear anything else about it until now. They were just like, here's this one more thing. And it was Metroid Prime 4, or there's no colon, but it's subheading Beyond. And it looks pretty good. You've speculated, and I saw other speculation, that this is secretly a Switch 2 launch title. And I think you are correct, because it did look pretty good for a Switch game.
Well, not just that, but also they said it's coming in 2025. So I feel like I think you're right that Switch 2 will probably get revealed fully like later this year, and then it'll be like a spring launch next year. And
That'd be
so
great.
it probably will be like their big launch title for the Switch 2. That's my speculation. There's no like confirmation that that's the case, but it makes the most sense. I'm sure they'll have some other surprises to launch the Switch 2 with, but like you said, we've known about this game for a long time, and it's been more or less vaporware, where we're just like, this is never going to happen. I'm sure it exists in some form somewhere, but we'll never be able to play it. But then they were like, hey, here it is. Here's a look at it, a very brief look. And it looks exactly like you would expect, but maybe a little bit better running on potentially new hardware, ?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really get any interesting new gameplay mechanics. It looked very similar to the Metroid Prime remakes or like re-releases that came out last year for the Switch, where, I mean, I didn't detect a ton of differences except for like maybe the graphical fidelity was better, but that was the only Metroid Prime game I've ever played, so I don't know how different they are game to game.
Yeah.
Usually when there's another iteration of a game, there's like some sort of interesting hook. It's not just more of the same. So I'm wondering what the interesting hook of this one will be. It kind of also made me want to go back and play Metroid Dread because I had such a good time with Metroid Dread. But I liked the look of this. This is something I'll definitely pick up probably, especially if it's like a launch title for whatever the Switch 2 is. But this was one where I enjoyed going back and watching other people watch this and see them realize what it was, because everyone's been waiting for this for so long.
Yeah, and Metroid is like one of those games that like it doesn't have like a super huge audience the way something like Mario or Zelda does, but it's like the people that love it, super love the series, especially the Prime game. So yeah, this is definitely a cool thing to launch the Switch 2 with.
Overall, though, a great showcase. I mean, Nintendo and Microsoft both had really, really solid showcases.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to question you with. Do you think this won Summer Games Fest Fake E3 period, or did Microsoft's Xbox showcase win?
It's hard to say. I mean, maybe it's recency bias, but I felt like there were more things I was excited about in this Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
And it was just like was so solidly packed with stuff, even though it was shorter than the Microsoft one by like an hour, I feel like. Because the Microsoft one was like an hour and a half, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was super long, but yeah, I think you're right. I'm on board with saying Nintendo probably snuck in at the last second and like knocked it out of the park. And because there was more stuff in this that I was like, ooh, I would like to play that.
Yeah.
Whereas there was like a few really cool things in the Microsoft one, and it was overall a really good showcase. But if I'm being honest, like over the next year, like the number of things that I will likely have picked up and at least tried to play through is higher with the Nintendo showcase. So
It's true. Good job, Nintendo. You did it again.
You did it again, except for Silksong. But
yeah,
that's not your fault.
I really don't know what it's not that my like spirit is broken regarding that, but I really don't know where else. I feel like they have to reveal it at like a showcase or something. It's not just going to be something where they drop it on Twitter and be like, it's here's a trailer. I feel like so many people are vying for this announcement. I feel like Keighley knows it's going to be big, and like Microsoft started their last press conference with it. Like people know that people want Silksong, so I have to imagine it's going to be at a show and not standalone. But now I don't really know. I mean, the Game Awards, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
Gamescom, I guess, is coming up, but maybe Gamescom. But I don't know, man. It could be not this year. I am sorry to say, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at latest it would be like hey, it's a hot drop during Game Awards, and that would be like a cool thing. But
That would be wild.
But do they need that much time? Is the real question mark. They've had like
I don't know.
so long for this game. How could like
It's crazy. Well, it's a very small team, and supposedly this one is much bigger. I mean, originally, Hornet was just going to be DLC for. It was going to be a thing where you could play Hollow Knight as Hornet, but then they realized that her character model was too like bigger, and the way she does things doesn't really. It basically breaks the game if you play through Hollow Knight as Hornet. So they decided to make it into a game, and so that's when like development really started. But I don't know, man. Yeah, I think they're just polishing at this point, but supposedly it's going to be way bigger than Hollow Knight, which is great. And so we just gotta let them cook, as they say.
Yeah, I guess so. But it looks like we've got another trailer to talk about.
Yes, I saw this Kickstarter go live, I think, last week, and I wanted to shout it out. Pipsqueak is the name of it. And speaking of Hollow Knight, it's kind of a mouse Hollow Knight, where you're a little mouse and you're in a little hood, and you got a little sword. And the art style is very cool, and I really like it. And the music is good, and it looks great. It's like it looks like a nice little game. What do you think of this? Are you watching the trailer?
I'm watching the trailer right now. I hadn't seen this before, but yeah, it does look pretty cool. Yeah, it definitely has those Hollow Knight vibes where you're like downward slashing to like pogo off of different things that would otherwise hurt you, but you're able to use them for platforming. So yeah, I mean, I like a Metroidvania. So if this comes out somewhat soon, maybe I will play
If you're interested in it, it's Pipsqueak with an exclamation point. The Kickstarter's live right now. It'll be live for like a month or however long. So check out the trailer, and if you want, you can donate to it and become a, what is it called? A funder?
A backer?
A backer, yeah. Kickstarter, yeah, there's no release date or anything. It's just like very, very early. But I like the art style of it, and I like a little mouse. So
yeah, it does have a nice art style to it. I'll give it that.
And then I also want to shout out Minecraft, which I talk about every once in a while. Minecraft 1.21 has released, and it's the Tricky Trials update. So this has added basically trial blocks, which are little, not like boss rushes. It's not really boss rushes though. It's like different enemies. It's actually, I watched a TikTok about it that I did not post, but it seems cool. Basically, there are new like trial areas underground where you have to compete, and then those get you trial keys, which unlock vaults, which then are different trials, and you can basically craft. You can collect breeze rods from these new enemies. Called breezes, that are these like little wind monsters. You can create a mace that allows you to negate fall damage and do a bunch of damage by falling from a great height. There's an ominous bottle that something happens with, which is pretty interesting. A lot of interesting stuff in this. They also added like 20 new paintings. There's some new enemies. It looks cool. I think I'm going to jump in and check this out, and maybe I'll have more to talk about. But I just saw a video about it last night, and I wanted to shout it out. If you're someone who every once in a while jumps back into Minecraft, it seems like this is a new, interesting time to check it out. Always when they release a new version of it is a good time to jump back in. But looks like there's a bunch of interesting, cool stuff in this update. So check it out.
And now another thing we got kind of previews for this last week was The Plucky Squire, which is a game I've been anxiously anticipating since they announced it. And it seems like another one of those games that's just been on infinite delay waiting for it to happen. But it has a nice art style to it, and it's like very heavily inspired by Mario Odyssey, especially where like you have the ability in different environments to like kind of go into like a wall or like a something where it turns into sort of a 2D sort of situation, and then you jump out of that and it's back to like the 3D world again, and you're just like exploring and platforming and stuff. Like that stuff seems super cool to me. I don't know, I'm very excited about this game, and I will definitely play it when it comes out. I don't know that they've said when it was going to come out just yet.
No, I don't think it has a release date yet.
But this was a game that was not shown at any of the Summer Games Fest like showcases, but like people got to go hands-on if they were actually physically at Summer Games Fest. Or maybe they just like sent them like some sort of preview code that they could do like a trial of it. But there were a bunch of outlets that were able to go hands-on with it and talk about it this last week. So if you're interested in this game, look up Plucky Squire previews, and there's a bunch out there to watch now. So I thought that was cool. And then a game, I didn't put this in our show notes, but I watched somebody played the demo. I think there's a demo out for that game, The Altars, which I thought looked really cool when they initially showed it off. And so basically, this is a game where you like crash land on some planet somewhere, and you are able to make it to this like station that is like a giant wheel basically. And when you go to like add different compartments to the wheel, it sort of turns into this 2D almost Fallout Shelter style thing where you can like look at it from the side, and you can just like add more storage space or like a different compartment of some sort, and then you just run around inside it. It almost feels like it was inspired by Fallout Shelter in that sense. But the cool aspect of it is that you're eventually creating these altars of yourself. And so you can look at, there's like basically a full timeline of your life up to that point. And you can see all these different markers along the way to show like different events that happened in your character's life. And then you go to, it's basically like a cloning device of some sort, and you go to clone yourself, but you can alter like an event along the timeline, and doing so creates like a different like parallel lifeline or timeline with different events. And that makes obviously the clone of yourself that you just created like a very different person, because they have different life experience. And so maybe they're like good at doing a different type of thing than you are. Like maybe they're good at engineering and you're good at something else. And at least the playthrough that I was watching of that demo, the guy, he was needed his help for like to fix something on the ship so that they wouldn't die. But the guy was like super mad at the player character for having like brought him into this world, into this like dire situation. Like, you didn't need to add me to this, and now I'm stuck in this with you. And so he was like super mad at him. And so I feel like maybe you could smooth that over through dialogue, but maybe you can't. But that guy like wanted to be left alone. And so yeah, you have like different dialogue choices as well, and like people can get mad at you or maybe befriend you. I don't know, but it's crazy. It was crazy to see like the timeline of like that person's life, and how like one like branching decision basically would change the entire timeline and the rest of the way. And it seemed like basically any of those points along the way, not just of the main character's timeline, but also like the timeline of the altar you just made could be turned into another altar. So like you get these really crazy variations on characters, all based on the same person, but informed by the different events along the timeline of that person's life that changed so many different things. So I think it will be really interesting to play through that game and see like how many different variations are possible and how deep that goes. And also just sort of where overall the story goes as you play through it.
Is it always on that 2D plane, like looking into the wheel, or do you ever like take control of one?
You're playing through the main as the main character in 3D, and you actually will leave the ship and go out and gather resources and things like that. So it is like a 3D like action game sort of, but you only go into the 2D view when you're on the ship, and you're like customizing the arrangement of the different compartments and like adding stuff, and then it goes down into like a third person view, and you're just like running around the ship. So yeah, I should have specified that. But yeah, so it's mostly a 3D like sort of third person action game, but yeah, it seems really cool to me, and I kind of want to look up more of it, and maybe I will actually download the demo and play it so we can talk about it at some point. But I have not done that yet, but it does look really cool to me.
Zach, the elephant in the room is that Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree came out, and neither of us are playing it.
Yeah. I was gonna say I don't know that I will play it because like that was such a moment in time for me, and I'm kind of like moving on with different stuff. But yeah, it is like what everybody's playing and talking about right now. So we are just sort of absent from that discussion. But you said you watched some of it. How did it look to you?
It looked cool. It looked like, honestly, more of the same. I watched a lot. So I watched a guy play through a lot of the base game whenever that came out instead of playing it. I like the idea of Elden Ring. I just don't really... The combat mechanics don't really mesh for me for whatever reason. I don't like Souls-like combat. But I'll watch someone play it, and it was very interesting to watch someone play it. And so I watched that same guy check out the DLC, and it seemed cool. It seemed very punishing. Like the first person he came upon was this big knight with a shield and a big mace, and he had to go through him a couple times before he could get to him, or like defeat him and get his mace or whatever. But it looks like if you like Elden Ring, it's more of the same with maybe some more interesting mechanics. I have already been seeing guides like these are the top 5 weapons you need to seek out early in the Shadow Realm, which is where this takes place. So I'm happy for people who play Elden Ring and like it. It seems like it's a great time for them.
Yeah, it's one of those. Check it out. It's one of those things where I'm not super into Souls-likes either. In fact, I like the one exception was Elden Ring, where I was able to actually get into that. I think some of that was just like the overwhelming hype of that game when it came out. And so there was so many guides and so many videos about it that it was like a little bit easier for me to like figure some stuff out and get into it. And also it was cool that like you can basically just explore around and keep like building up your character to the point where you're basically over leveled for most everything you encounter. So that helped a lot as well. But yeah, I've tried other Souls like since Elden Ring and have not been able to get into them. So I think it was just like a weird like one-off thing for me where I was like super into Elden Ring when it came out and I played all the way through it. And then just ever since then, it's been like, I don't really care about Souls-likes anymore. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't need more of them. So more Elden Ring is cool, but not necessarily something I'm going to jump back into. I'm bad at with DLC anyway. Like I don't usually go back and play a lot of DLCs. So yeah, same case here. I guess I'm just...
The only one I have really ever engaged with is Breath of the Wild's DLC was really, really cool. The Trial of the Master Sword, which was basically a roguelike where you start with nothing and have to build yourself up through the different levels, I found to be very, very fun. But yeah, I also don't really engage with a lot of DLC these days. But
yeah, it's just like a weird thing to like. I played that game like a year or two ago, and now like I'm trying to play other new stuff, and you're like, hey, remember this game? Jump back into that. And it's just like, I don't know if I have time for that. So yeah. It's not exclusive problem to Elden Ring. It's just like that's how I look at it. DLC for most games. So it's probably not the way you should look at it, but that's how it goes for me. So, but let's talk about something I did play. In anticipation of SteamWorld Heist 2 later this year, I played through the first SteamWorld Heist game. It was like $1.50 or like $2 on sale during Summer Games Fest, like that's little,
crazy.
Like week or two long period. PlayStation had their summer game sales happening, and I was like, oh, this game is like so incredibly cheap, and there's a new game coming out. I should play through this. And I did, and it's not a super long game, but it's very fun. I thought it's basically like XCOM or like Mario and Rabbids, but like a 2D version of that, where instead of you queuing up an attack and it being like, oh, you have like a 90% chance of success on this shot you're going to take, instead of that, you like actually control the character's arm and move it around and aim it. And then you fire your shot, and your shot can like ricochet off of walls and ceilings and items in the area, so that you can like hit someone who's hiding behind cover. And you're like adding a whole bunch of different characters to your party, and they have different classes. Like my favorite one was there was a character called Payroll, and he looked kind of like Gizmo Duck from DuckTales. He had like the wheel that he was rolling around on, but instead of like a duck, he was a frog, but like a steampunk like metal frog basically, because everything's steampunk in this game. But he was rolling around, and so his class was like, what is the term I'm trying to think of? I can't think of the word for it. It's fallen out of my brain. But you can move characters so far, and the movement, like so many grid spaces, I guess, and it'll be orange and you can still fire, but you can go beyond that and it turns blue and then you can't fire anymore because you're basically considered sprinting. And so you have to kind of pick and choose how far you want to move characters within the space. But with this character, you had a special ability. As you level up your characters, you unlock different abilities and improvements for those characters. And their ability was like you could go as far as you could go and still be able to attack. And so basically the whole point was to get around behind the character or an enemy character and shoot them in the back, and you got like a bonus damage for shooting them in the back. So that was like one of my favorite characters to play with. But yeah, it was super fun. You're constantly finding new weapons along the way and different items as well. So a fun little game. I really like that they basically, this developer is like, let's do a Metroidvania, which they've done twice with like SteamWorld Dig and SteamWorld Dig 2. Let's do like a tactical game with the SteamWorld Heist games. They have a SteamWorld Quest, which is like an old school like RPG sort of Final Fantasy style. And then they have that SteamWorld Build, which is basically like a SimCity, like, but they're like it's all within the same universe, and they're just like experimenting with these different genres basically, and adapting their formula to that genre. And it like they're actually really good at it. So like when they do venture into these different genres, they always do a good job of it. So yeah, I'm into this game. I played it probably a couple of weeks ago now, since it's been a little while since we recorded, but I definitely recommend this, and I'm now like very much anticipating the second one when it comes out later this year. Do we want to get into what you've been playing and watching, or do we want me to go straight into Dragon's Dogma 2? Because I've also been playing that.
I'll just briefly talk about something before we get into that. I watched the second season of After Party. Did you ever watch that show?
No.
It's on Apple TV, and it's a kind of like a murder mystery show, but the hook of it is it's like all taking place from different people's perspectives. So like a murder happens basically, and then they interview different people, and each person's story is the same story, but from their perspective and also in a different style. So like in the first season, there was like one person who told his story, and it was like in the style of an action movie. Another one was like a noir movie, or like a romantic comedy, basically. And I watched the first season a while ago and really liked it. And we finally watched the second season. And in the second season, there's an episode where the person's perspective is supposed to be a Wes Anderson movie.
Ooh.
I think they did a good job of doing a parody of that. And this season also had like a Bridgerton episode, as well as like another noir episode. There was like a very funny short segment where it was like a super cheesy soap opera. But these are great. It's Sam Richardson is the main person in it, and he's very funny. And there's some other great cameos of people. But it was great. If you like shows like Only Murders in the Building, this is like very much in the same vein, where people would call it like a cozy murder show, where a murder happened and they're like trying to solve it, but it's also like basically a comedy, and there's like a bunch of like funny side characters that come up. But if you're looking for something to just waste some time on, season 1 and 2 are both super solid. There's not going to be a season 3. It's by that Lord and Miller, who made like a Lego movie and stuff.
What is this streaming on?
Apple TV Plus,
Oof.
which is probably why no one has ever heard of it.
Yeah.
Because they don't ever advertise any of their stuff, and you just sort of like have to know about
They
it.
only advertise it if you're watching stuff on Apple TV, and then you see all kinds of ads for stuff, and it's
for a bunch of shows that seem made up because you've never heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really weird experience when you like randomly. So like me and my dad were watching a baseball game. They have this really awful thing where on Friday nights they have like exclusive rights to streaming certain baseball games. And so he did like a trial so that we could watch one of the games on like a Friday night or something like that. And all the ads were for Apple TV shows. And you're right, they seemed made up because I've like never heard of them before. And they're like season 3 of some show that you've never heard of. I was like, what is happening? I mean, they all looked really good, but like they seemed made up because you've never heard of them anywhere else. So it was really,
there's
a
like
weird
3
experience.
seasons of a show where Jason Momoa is like in a world where everyone is blind, and you're like, what? There's 3 seasons of this show?
Yeah. How come I've never heard of this, but it's been running for like multiple years at this point? It was just super weird a weird experience to watch something on Apple TV.
Well, if he has that trial, you should definitely check out After Party, because I would say it's probably a great show to watch with a family.
I'm pretty sure that's run out by now. That was like probably a couple months ago, but yeah, maybe I will eventually venture into the world of Apple TV Plus, but I haven't yet.
Zach, talk to me about Dragon's Dogma 2.
So I was not sure what to expect from this, to be honest. I wasn't sure if I would get into it or not, but it seemed interesting and like the reviews were good. So I was like, I'm into like an open world medieval fantasy RPG. Let me try this out in the absence of like a new Elder Scrolls game. And I mean, it definitely is that, but it's also like I got super into it. I played it kind of obsessively over the last few days. It's a little slow to get into at first, but like once you start unlocking more like vocations and abilities and stuff like that, it starts to get really fun. But what I really like about the game is the pawn system, which is it almost makes it like a Strand game. So I don't know if like I didn't play Dragon's Dogma 1, the previous one. So like people probably are already all aware about all this stuff, but it was like new to me. But basically you create your character and then you create your main pawn using the same like character creator. And so basically you and your pawn, which is like your companion basically, and you're running around together and you're leveling up and everything, but you can have 2 additional pawns in your party. So you have like a party of 4 basically, and they basically will help you out in combat, and they'll have like little dialogue along the way. And the pawns that you add don't level up with you, but they can, like, you can have them carry items for you and you can give them gear and stuff like that. But the idea is you're constantly swapping your pawns in and out. Not you and your main one, but like the other 2 ones you can swap in and out all the time. And they are just like created by other players. So basically my pawn will probably show up in somebody else's playthrough and they can add them to their party. And when they do that, like if I rest at an inn, when I wake up, my pawn will be like, hey, while you were sleeping, I like went off and adventured with somebody else, and here's like some resources or whatever. And when you like add a party, like a pawn from somebody else, when you first do that, it'll be like, here's their details, here's what class they are, here's what abilities they have. And they've been adventuring with other people. So like a bunch of people gave them like thumbs ups or a little heart emoji. You can rate them based on that, based on your experience with the pawn. And because they don't level, as your characters level, you'll swap them out for higher level ones as you go. But they can like help you out as you're going around. They'll be like, you'll be running around. They'll be like, hey, in another world, when I was running around with my main master or whatever, we found this chest over here. Do you want me to lead you to it? And then you just like hit up on the D-pad and they'll like guide you over to it, and you can get items that way. Or they'll be like, hey, when I was adventuring with someone else, we found a cave nearby. Do you want me to lead you to it? And you'll be like, yes. And you'll go to this cave and you'll go like clear out the cave with them. And then you'll like send them away and you'll like find a different pawn to add to your group. And they can guide you to like main quest stuff as well. Like they'll be, when you go to accept them as a pawn or like a party member, they'll have it'll say whether they can lead you on quests or not. And so you just add one of those and they'll help you like lead you to the next quest marker. So it's like, I don't know. It's a really fun, cool system that is like similar to a Strand game where you're not actually playing with other people in the world, but it feels like they've been there. And so they kind of help you out in that way. So I thought that was really cool. Also, like the combat is kind of cool because there's like a bunch of different classes to use, and you can unlock additional ones as you go. But like
I remember the classes were very cool. Like there was that arcane trickster one or whatever. What class are you?
So I started as the fighter, which is like the basic sword and shield dude. And I had my pawn be a mage so that she could like heal me and attack enemies from a distance. But I have gone over to, because I unlocked the two-handed weapon guy, and so I've been using that. But I'm gonna switch over to an archer to try that out for a while. Because the cool part about constantly switching up your class is that you do unlock these like sort of passive abilities from each of the classes that you can put on to whatever class you're using. So like I can use like more health from the or like more defense from like the fighter on my archer character and stuff like that. And you get a whole bunch of different sort of passive abilities that you can add to your class as you go. So it does sort of help you out to constantly switch your class and your pawns all the time. So I don't know. I've been really enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun to just like run around and explore the world and have different characters with you as you go. So a very cool game so far, I have to say.
There you go. Have you run into any? I know that there was a thing where people were making like joke pawns where there's like a celebrity one where it looks like the guy from Kung Pao or something.
I've run into a few, or I've like seen some. Like there was one that was called Furiosa. I don't remember what class she was or anything like that, but I was like, oh, people are just like making characters from movies and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think I saw like an Austin Powers one also.
But yeah, it's a cool game, and I wish I'd spent more time with the character creator, especially for my pawn, because I basically just took one of the randomized like. I don't usually care to do much with character creators, but I wish I had in this game, because you almost have to make your pawn someone interesting so that somebody will want to take them. But I sadly did not do that. If I were to start the game over again at some point, I would spend more time on the character creator, especially for my pawn. So, but it's a very cool game, especially if you like open world RPGs and if the pawn system sounds interesting to you. So on that note, do you have any parting wisdom?
Zach, you know what I've been doing lately? Summertime, I have some allergies, and I'm always blowing my nose, but I have found I get really good sleep if I use Breathe Right strips. Have you ever used a Breathe Right strip?
I have not.
It's like a little like very firm Band-Aid that you put on the bridge of your nose, and then you kind of like hold it there for a second, and then when you release, it opens up both of your nose holes, whatever those
nasal passages.
Yes. And you can just breathe super well when you're falling asleep, and it has led to me having very restful sleep. So if you're someone who blows their nose a lot during the summertime because of all the plants being in the air or whatever, check out Breathe Right strips. A great I don't know if that's a brand name or if that's a type of thing.
I think it is. Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, but a wonderful little thing I've discovered.
Yeah, so I guess pick up some Breathe Right strips.
Yeah, do it.
And on that note, go ahead and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at Starside Cafe. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.